Jai Kunjo Sungye Denpa Da Sangye Da Jancho Semba Tham Jingye Jingye Labda Sonye Yongso Zombe Ngata Chenpo Da Chugye Inambara Da Jen Samye Mechabe Tolke Dede Shindo Drubar Joji
We will begin with the opening prayers.
대단히 이제 다음에 이제 가다 주게 동인데나 디젤로만 잡아 가서 이제 배제 이제 배제 년 받아다 돼 와이게 날로는 얘기 로모나면 얘기는 로 그이라게 저 뭐, 함지에게도 나게 줘던 도 한시 너무 위담에 이제 상경이라는 이제 상경이는 만도 지메다 발음 진짜를 도저히 저는 너무 요구 이제 나서도 이거 들어서 되는 관심이 유매 많이 유매 레전드 안다 보면은 이제 나는 소소한 거를 좋아 좀 이제 전한데 미국을 잡아다 나나를 넘으로 담쟁이 마대란데 심기를 그래서 배는 유몽어 매집에 간다는 쪽은 담에 다시 안다 돈 담제라 도서 이제 스버드 범위 별로 심전하다 사이지 이시 생아대란데 소소소마 방갈에 초래 좀 봐서 예배를 제주 좀 봐서 좀 이게 마음에 잡에 잘 나와서 시작할 여러 개로 예제도 되잖아 뭐 예배된 바구니 선자 그 이름 뭐 잘라 자자로 완전 도저 저러고 돌아마가마 봐 이거로 그냥 줄여서 예배를 틀려군지 저런 주시면 이제 좀 나는 여기 왼쪽 다음에 도저히 경험을 시제준의 남자 도미기에 손을 오늘을 랭킹보다 대주주는 놈이 거가자 미규도지 샬라 차자 어디서 너마를 무지에 나게 조르베메 되죠라 그린 심여 권에 지런데 구손도 영으로 자도 올라서다 나만에게 상황 세능도와
Now you can all hear me, right? Today I would like to offer my greetings to all the people listening over the internet, the lamas and spiritual friends and teachers at the various monasteries and nunneries, the members of the Sangha, in particular, all of the nuns at the nuns shadras, and all the lay monastics listening over the internet in Tibet and abroad. I would like to wish you my warm greetings. Today is the 8th day of the AUTOBIOGRAPHICAL Spring Teachings. And so today I would like to speak to all of you about today is the 16th of the good deeds from MIKYÖ DORJE's autobiographical verses Good Deeds. Now, if we look at according to the outline from the commentary on the good deeds by the attendant Sanjay Pandit, I think probably best if I show it to you. And so to explain it in conjunction with the outline, explaining in terms of the outline, there's the passage on meditating on relative bodhicitta has two parts: exchanging ourselves from others in meditation, taking adversity as a path, and post-meditation. And taking adversity as the path and post-meditation has 10 subtopics. And the first one is taking run out of supplies as a path, and so forth. Third is taking speech as a path, taking pleasing words as the path, and all of these we have already been covered. Through the fifth, these taking suffering as the path. So today, where we've come to is taking the benefit and happiness of good intentions as the path, and the seventh, taking acting upon good intentions as the path. These are the two that we have come to today. So among these, the verse for the taking benefit and habit of the good intentions of the path, the stanza reads, how could I bring all beings throughout space the inferior and provisional benefits and pleasures of existence and peace instead of the true and benefit of true enlightenment? I think of this as one of my good deeds. Now, there's one thing that I need to explain here. Generally, in the autobiographical verses, the good deeds, there are the root verses, and there are two different commentaries. And the author of the two commentaries is the same, and the title is actually the same. But there's a difference in terms of the extent of their explanations. One of them we got from the Jaipung library, and the other came from the Podramas. The one from Jaipung was published by the Vajravidya Institute in Varanasi. The one that was received from the Potala Palace I received that one while I was teaching about MIKYÖ Dorje's autobiography, and before that I'd never seen it. And so between the two of them, the author is the same, the title is the same, but there are big differences in the content. For some verses, there are even 2 or 3 pages difference. And there are also differences in the root verses as they're described in the commentaries, but the root verses that I'm showing you now are taking the separate edition of the root verses that is published in the collected works, and I've taken that and presented it. So like in the future, I'd like to I think we need to examine the commentaries and then compare the differences in the various editions of the root verses. But I thought I'd just a good idea to take this opportunity to explain this to you. Now the 16th stanza, or the 16th stanza, or good deed. And the 16th stanza is the 16th good deed. And so the 16th good deed, the main point of it is that, so generally, if we are unable to dredge the depths of samsara and bring all sentient beings to the level of unexcelled Buddhahood, even if we bring them to achieve the temporary pleasures of gods and humans, or, which is even better than that, the levels of listeners and arhats and pratyeka Buddhas, even that alone does not really fulfill the intent of the bodhisattvas who have extremely great courage, or fulfill their wishes. And for this reason, someone like KARMAPA MIKYÖ DORJE had like the resolve of bodhicitta and courage that was equal to Avalokiteshvara's. And so you could say that the greatest example, or the greatest quality of his, was that he had a great pure intentions for the teachings and sentient beings. And this is like his greatest example. Now, in older times, there was the Kadampa Geshe Trungpa. So Trungpa, what he said was, he said of his Lama Atisha, said he did not praise the listeners, the pratyeka Buddhas, that highly. Because when you talk about listeners and pratyekas, if you say that they're very good and excellent, he never really praised them much in that way. And the reason for this is because if he'd even praised them highly, then people would say, oh, then the state of the listeners and pratyeka Buddhas are really good. And that's enough, and that's what I want. It's possible that people might think this and wish to achieve those. And so therefore, Lord Atisha did not really praise the states of the listeners and pratyeka Buddhas, and did not present it as being terribly important. Similarly, MIKYÖ DORJE himself No matter how great the temporary pleasures our mothers, sentient beings, might achieve, no matter how great or excellent they might be, MIKYÖ did not really wish for that and did not really praise it either. Not only did he not really praise it, he even saw those people who had achieved temporary pleasures as deserving compassion. For a short time, they've gained some resources and wealth, they've had some pleasures, and they see that as being good in their own minds. But for someone who, in terms of the perspective of someone who sees the nature of samsara, their situation is still suffering by nature. And still under the control of karma and afflictions. It's not freed from that. And so for that reason, they deserve our compassion. They're someone from whom we should feel real affection. Now, generally, during the time of MIKYÖ DORJE, with the situation in Tibetan society was that some people said they were really very benevolent. Like, I really think about helping others, they said. And they said, oh, I can really think about the long-term benefit. There are many such people. And some of them, what they did was, they thought that would be preventing people from having physical difficulties and health, losing their health or losing their possessions, their physical possessions, or they considered losing power to be extremely important. And they considered that to be extremely important. And so they did whatever they could to help them in those areas and to give them as much aid as they could. So this is one thing that happened. Likewise, another thing they did was that within the monasteries and nunneries, there are the monks and nuns, and they thought that they had to, for the short term, they had to have enough food and clothing, whether they had, and then they would hurry about day and diet, whether they're looking for sponsors or doing whatever they need to do, running around. And so then in the end, they didn't even have thing to eat, enough time to eat and drink themselves, and spend their own time looking for the temporary needs of the monastics. And so these people, this would say that they're looking for the long-term benefit, and they're thinking about the benefit for the long time they're working to benefit the Sangha, but that's how they spent their entire life. Then there are also some people that they could even think that they had, so they wanted to benefit others, and they could think even a long time into the future. And so what they would think about it is, so they think we need to think about the future lives and protecting the life lower realms and avoiding those. And so if we can, if sentient beings are born in the sentient realms as unbearable sufferings, we need to avoid the sufferings of the lower realms. And so in order to prevent this, they would try to protect the lives of sentient beings. And they spent, all they did was try to do life preservers and protect a few sentient beings, a few animals. Otherwise, they didn't do any other great things. They just always spent the time doing life raising, because they thought it wouldn't be nice to be born as a animal. The next life is they do whatever they could to protect animals and do life raising, and that's all they did. And then, and they would kind of criticize and have wrong views about those great beings who benefit to sentient beings and worked for the sake of the teachings and practice of the teaching. They'd say they don't have any love for the sentient beings. They don't have any affection. They eat meat, they drink their blood, and they just criticize them all the time. And so that was another type of being. There were also some people who said that they could really look well into the future for the long term for the benefit of sentient beings. And what they said that they have altruistic liberation. What they would say is that, oh, suffering is just samsara is just suffering by nature, and it's a suffering of birth, age, sickness, and death. And birth, aging, sickness, and death are extremely terrifying. So what is the cause of the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death? It comes from our minds, they said. And so the mind, it kind of moves through the stream of thoughts and conceptions, and because of that we accumulate karma, and so that because of that we experience the ripenings of those of karmas. So if we can stop thoughts, then we can stop the sequence of birth, the continuum of birth, they thought. And so what we need to do in order to stop the thoughts, what they thought is just to realize empty, pitch black emptiness and meditate on that, that would be enough. So then to go into some unpopulated empty valley, and as I mentioned before, and meditate on some limited blank emptiness. And it's like the emptiness of a pillar being empty of a jug or something like that. They just say that there's nothing at all, and they just meditate on this blank nothingness. And not only would they meditate on themselves, they would get all those close to them, everyone that they liked, and they try to get them to meditate on this sort of limited emptiness too. And so in the words, they said, I'm transmitting the Dharma to them, I'm teaching them the Dharma. And I'm bringing them to achieve liberation and missions, and I'm ripening and liberating them, they said. In any case, at that time in Tibet, there are people who said they had pure intentions for the teachings and sentient beings, and said they could think about the long term. There are many who said this, but they only spent all their time acting in such ways. But what MIKYÖ DORJE did was, so MIKYÖ DORJE himself, thought to himself that all sentient beings not to be brought to achieve liberation. In order to do that, no matter, you need to do whatever needs to be done to that, and whatever you need to sacrifice in order to do that. Other than that, for example, he was not satisfied with the partial pleasures and riches of samsara or nirvana, nor did he consider the partial liberation of a limited nirvana. He was never satisfied with these. Not only was he not satisfied with them, nor did he find particularly helping such temporarily with riches and so forth, and consider all that help all such important, and he did not consider it the best way to help others. And the reason for this is that if we are attached to mere temporary pleasure and wealth, and we consider it to be important, if we really get attached to it and consider that alone to be important, and consider that to be significant, then it prevents us from attaining great enlightenment. Not only is it an obstacle to achieving great enlightenment, there's also that they will do many unvirtuous things for the sake of this temporary human life, and then once again be cast back down into samsara and the lower realms. And so for this reason, MIKYÖ DORJE, if he saw a situation where he thought something would go for the benefit of bringing sentient beings to liberation and mission, he would work towards that. And he would take that. And if he saw something that he thought would bring people to liberation, he'd take the opportunity. If he didn't, others do with the sort of seeming actions that looked good on the outside to everyone, he wouldn't nearly do things to look good. So he wouldn't do such virtues at all, and he didn't consider such things to be important. And so for this reason, some people would criticize MIKYÖ DORJE. And what they would say is, so MIKYÖ DORJE, your the way of thinking is a little bit limited. Your ideas are too limited. And that's the reason, because if it's embraced by the Mahayana resolve of bodhicitta and dedications, whatever virtue you do becomes a cause of great enlightenment. Isn't that taught? So why, MIKYÖ DORJE? are not. So you should consider the temporary benefit of giving people food and clothing and so forth, and you should consider this important. You shouldn't. It's possible for this to become the cause of great enlightenment, right? Because if it's embraced by the Mahayana bodhicitta and dedication, then it becomes the cause of liberation and omniscience, it is taught. So this is what people would say. So generally, when we think what they say is, from one aspect, it's true because in terms of becoming causes of great enlightenment, there are the distance causes and the direct causes. Even if something is not a direct cause, then it can be an indirectly a cause. There are those that are the actual direct substantial causes of becoming enlightened. So there are these two different types of causes. But when we think that the distant causes of achieving great enlightenment, and we think of them as being too important, and only spend our time working on those, then they can actually prevent us from working at the direct causes. So we do need to do the distant causes that would achieve enlightenment, but we shouldn't. But there's no certainty that they're going to cause enlightenment, and they may well, if we're a bodhisattva who's not skilled in means, this may adversely affect the activity of the bodhis and the bodhisattvas. For example, if you have a really skilled doctor, someone who has experience and who has intelligence, and somebody is able to take a look at your pulses, and if you're checking the urine, so this is what we do in Tibetan medicine. You look at the pulses and the urine, right? And they can know what the causes of this and what needs to be done about it. So they can diagnose this way. So if they have no experience, no intelligence, sometimes if you look at it, it might seem like a fever in there, but it's actually a fever, an illness caused by cold. And sometimes it might look at a fever, an illness caused by cold, but it's actually an illness caused by heat. And so if something is an illness caused by heat, then you get really thirsty and you really want to drink. And particularly, you often really want to drink alcohol, right? And if you give that sort of person, you give them alcohol, then their heat is going to increase. So you can't give them alcohol at all. But what some people do, they don't understand that giving them alcohol will harm them. And since they're incredibly thirsty, they feel like they're being compassionate and give things them alcohol. But in actuality, they're harming them. It's similar like that. So skilled doctors understand the causes and conditions of the illness, and they look at they diagnose carefully, looking at the conditions, and since even though there's a particular, sometimes you have certain things that you'd like to eat or drink because of the illness, but this is a craving that's caused by the illness. And a skilled doctor does not influence that. It actually gives what is instead actually beneficial for the patient. So sometimes we consider the distant causes. If we cause the distant causes of achieving great enlightenment to be important, then it actually prevents us from achieving the actual causes of great enlightenment. So that's the point there. In any case, the main point of this stanza is that to wrap it up, this is basically this, I think. So basically in our lives, whatever action or task we're doing, we need to have a good intention, the pure altruistic intention of achieving the level of Buddhahood. So that's what it's saying. And so within that, I think we need to understand three really important points. And what these are, we need to understand what benefiting others or altruism means. And we need to understand what's meant by a pure intention. And when we talk about accomplishing virtue, and you say, what is a quality? Or we have the virtue has to come to a certain quality, a certain standard. If we're doing a pseudo virtue, then that's not really accumulating virtue. And so, for that reason, these are these three main reasons or three main points. If we understand these, then I think we'll be able to understand the meaning of this verse by MIKYÖ DORJE. And so the first one is, what is altruism? So this word altruism is something we've all heard. We say it a lot. So what actually is altruism? Not to say it really clearly and plainly. It's the thought, could I help things turn out well for other people? The thought, can things turn out well for other people? I'm going to do good things for others. That's what altruism is. So we have this thought that I want things to turn out well for other people. We need to understand what's actually good for the other people. What is not good for other people? We need to understand that. But everyone has their own individual way of thinking about what is good or what is not. Everyone has their own way of thinking about it. They have different criteria for what is good and not good. For example, some people think that if I had a lot of money, that would be good. That's what some people think. And what some people think is, if I had a long and healthy life, that would be good. This is what some people think. What some people think, if they were able to lift themselves up by their bootstraps and become powerful, that's what they think would be good. So what they think is good is what they think is good is having that power. So some people think that if they're achieving the state of a god or of achieving the level of a sage or something like that is what would be good. In any case, everyone has their own particular way of thinking about what is good and what isn't. And because people have so many different ways of thinking about things, is that people have different ideas in their mind about what's most important, what is best. But it's not the same. What one person sees as good, it's not necessarily seen as good by other people. So, for example, the people who want to become the richest people on earth probably think that the best thing to do for other things, what they think is the best way to help others, it would be to make them into the richest people in the world. For example, within many parents in our societies who are really unable to leave any particular legacy in their own life, and so they kind of put all their hopes on their children. They hope that they can become really effective people and that their children will be able to accomplish the things that they've been unable to do, that they've wanted to do, but unable to accomplish in their lifetime. They make their children do it, and they place their hopes on them. And so, they encourage them, and they try to encourage them to do these things. In terms of from the children's perspective, the parents have such high hopes in them, and always encouraging them in this way that it puts a lot of pressure on the children and gives them a hard time. The reason why it gives them so many difficulties is that the parents consider their own way of thinking to be the most important and think that their own choices are the best ones, but they don't really think about what is the child's feelings. They don't really take much attention to that. So for that reason, and so for that reason, it becomes like a bit of disruption between the parents and the children. There's a lot of pressure comes from the parents onto the children, right? And so for that reason, when you think about what is of actually benefit for others or what is best for others, talking about this is something that's not as easy as we think. It's actually incredibly complicated and it's actually very difficult to understand. So what is the most beneficial for others and what is best for others? If you ask yourself, is it best to make them rich? Is it to make them more powerful? Is it to make them live longer? Is it to make them more famous? Or is it to put all of those together? And so that someone has a long life, powerful and rich, and they're famous, and he thinks, is that the best thing to do all those together? Or if we talk about it in terms of the Buddhist Dharma, is it best to liberate them from the lower realms? Is it best to liberate them from samsara? So these are many questions that we need to talk about. Before we actually can benefit others, we need to understand what is benefit for others, what is best for others. We need to recognize that first. And in order to identify that, we need to know ourselves what is best. If we don't know what is best, if we ourselves don't know what is best, then and we want to do the good for others, then if you don't understand what is good, it's impossible for you to know what is the best way to, what is the way to bring about that good, the way to actually help beings. It's actually, as I mentioned earlier, people have many different opinions and understandings about what is the most beneficial and what is actually good for them. There are many different understandings, but we have many experiences and situations in our lives. And we can see that it is not necessarily so that our opinions are exactly right. Do they actually always match? They don't. The things that people think that people have different ways of thinking about what is best and most helpful, but does that actually meet what's the actual facts of our lives? It's not necessarily so. And so for that reason, what we need to do is since it's not certain that what we think is most beneficial and what is best and what is going to be, and we need to go study with other people. We need to swallow our pride and we need to say, okay, I don't really know. And we need to go study with other people. And so what sort of people should we go to study with? People who have prajna and great experience. We need to find someone like that to study with. So I don't understand this. So what do you think? We need to ask them. We need to study with them. So when you think about in terms of us Buddhists, who are we going to take the study? The basic one is the Buddha, the Bhagavan Buddha. The Bhagavan Buddha taught the Dharma, and the Dharma that he gave to us. This is the advice he gave us. But the Bhagavan Buddha was lived 2,500 years ago. And so we can't just go right to him and ask him questions. We can't go study with him, right? So they're the instructions that have been passed down from the Buddha, from one person to the next, after the Buddha, that have been passed down to someone. And the person who have received these instructions on what we should do and what should not do is our guru or our spiritual friend. And so we need to study and take advice from our spiritual friend. So the main point is that the Buddha had the great prajna of realizing the nature of the world. Since he was that kind of an individual, first of all, we need to look at what he said. We need to look at this. And what he said is that what is most beneficial for ourselves and others is the Dharma. And so therefore, we need to practice the Dharma, he said. So what is the reason why we need to practice Dharma, or the aim for practicing Dharma? The Buddha taught very clearly what the reasons for practicing Dharma is, what the aims should be. And what he said is that the reason or aim for practicing the Dharma is to achieve liberation or to achieve the level of Buddhahood. So if you're someone who has belief in the Buddha, the most beneficial and the best for us is practicing the Dharma. And that practice of Dharma should be to achieve liberation and achieve the level of Buddhahood. And since he said that so clearly, we need to follow that. And so for our own selves, whether we're talking about for our own selves or for our benefits, we should recognize that the best and greatest benefit is to recognize that achieving liberation and omniscience are the best things for ourselves and for others. We need to develop certainty and elicit this uncertainty within ourselves. And so if achieving liberation and omniscience is the ultimate aim, and if this is the greatest benefit, then implicitly what this shows is that, what this teaches is that any other ways of bringing aims and any other aims or ways of helping us are not the best. They're not the best way of helping others. And they are not the ultimate benefit and happiness. And so achieving the state of Buddhahood and liberation are our main aim, or the main thing we need to accomplish. And so any other aim, there are many different things that we do that don't have that aim. And we should not consider those to be the most important or the most significant, because there's only one thing that can be the most significant, most important. If it's going to be the most important, then there's only one. If there are two, then it's not the most important, because they're equal. You can't say that one is the most important. And so for that reason, we need to understand what altruism or benefiting others is. Altruism is, when we look at the teachings of the Buddha, it's the practicing the Dharma. And practicing the Dharma and benefiting others is in order for the others to achieve liberation and for others to achieve Buddhahood. This is the greatest benefit we can bring others. And some ordinary people, it's not as a question of some ordinary people getting together and having a discussion and deciding, oh, this is the greatest benefit. This is when the Buddha, knowing the nature of the world exactly as it is, and then teaching us and giving us direction. That's what it is. So if we believe in the Buddha, then we need to follow that. If you don't believe in the Buddha, then there's no particular reason to have to follow it. And so now we'll next take a 30-minute intermission.
Namo Sangye Lamai Kunja Chigi Gula Sawai Dipso Mahanam Kadai Nyambe Simche Tamche Lamai Diche Noche Zobe Gula Sawai Dipso Mahanam Kadai Nyambe Simche Tamche Lamai Tuje Jibe Gula Sawai Dipso Mahanam Kadai Nyambe Simche Tamche Lamai Sangye Rimboy Chela Sawai Dipso Mahanam Kadai Nyambe Simche Tamche Lamai Kinchai Chigi Gula Sawai Dipso Mahanam Kadai Nyambe Simche Tamche Lamai Diche Loje Zobe Gula Sawai Dipso Mahanam Kadai Nyambe Simche Tamche Lamai Tuje Jibe Gula Sawai Dipso Mahanam Kadai Nyambe Simche Tamche Najurage Wanchoy Sangye Nyamboy Chibe Gomon Tobra Jingye Labdosul Najurage Wanchoy Chiboy Dawai Jawai Mibi Chogye Ngidro Zayche Mahanam Kadai Nyambe Simche Tamche Najurage Wanchoy Sangye Nyamboy Chibe Gomon Tobra Jingye Labdosul Najurage Wanchoy Chiboy Dawai Jawai Mibi Chogye Ngidro Zayche Mahanam Kadai Nyambe Simche Tamche Najurage Wanchoy Sangye Nyamboy Chibe Gomon Tobra Jingye Labdosul Najurage Wanchoy Chiboy Dawai Jawai Mibi Chogye Ngidro Zayche Kajye Dorje Chamne Soy Gyawai Ribe Dorje Bardoy Jibe Kunjo Sumboy Dedai Najurage Wanchoy Sangye Dorje Changye Kuro Sawalai Chuje Shi Rabjangye Sangye Lai Chanchoy Sembol Paul Kandroy Chijoy Somye Sotai Jibe Korwai Dingye Namge Nisoy Benza Samanta Ye Nam Shubaye Sanje Jancho Simba Da Lama Dorje Lobe Da Yeda Haso Kordai Je Deson Deshe Male Nishe Rai Jeba Da Nishe Jewa Chaja Da Jewa Bumdai Donjo De Mende Chidoi Nene Mele Goma Namla Be Tuje Segon Sheso Se Shine Jingye La Dos Ome Tela Po Zan Mega Samon Saparana Samai Sa Karmapa yi gompa zo je Namo Guru Omi Nicho Dharmana Chidai Shiroi Nyaiba Chidorje Chala Sawade Nyesudege Butsulai Jingelo Shinagara Zegebana Shekwashi Shilai Hainebe Jedeloi Palai Sawade Nyesudege Butsulai Jingelo Jambola Harigembana Chiye Sola Hainebe Jenaro Bala Savade Nyesudege Butsulai Jingelo Hoshiro Sagegembana Chijide Yolai Hainebe Jemabalo Tala Savade Nyesudege Butsulai Jingelo Kankawai Jingegembana Chesehoi Nilai Hainebe Jemile Bula Savade Nyesudege Butsulai Jingelo Shanalai Bagegembana Cheshajai Chelai Hainebe Jedaboy Hajelai Savade Nyesudege Butsulai Jingelo Taloi Bagegembana Chejeloi Nyandai Dembaye Chegomsege Bula Savade Nyesudege Butsulai Jingelo Jizoi Bededena Rasen Chekroi Moi Jebe Lamai Namlai Savade Nyesudege Butsulai Jingelo Nucho Uje Sheyeso Choite Moi Nilai Hainebe Yundurje Pamolai Savade Nyesudege Butsulai Jingelo Nidurje Shengwe Sheyena Chile Shilai Hainebe Palmai Nilai Savade Nyesudege Butsulai Jingelo Tage Kelai Satabe Dadai Juju Senjenam Jibai Malera Sane Hayende
Can you all hear me? Okay. Now, as I was saying before, benefiting others, or what is the greatest benefit for others, the best benefit for others, is something that everyone has different opinions about it. And the most important thing, and everyone thinks about it in a different. So what people think is the most important, whatever they consider most important, what they think is most important, what's not important. Not only do you have people have different ideas in our own lives, even for any individual person, there are different things that we think is important when we're young, and the things that we think that are important when we're older, and then the things that we think are different when we're elderly. So there are different ways we think. The way we think of things as being important changes over our lives. So it's not definite. Likewise, when you have no money, you think, may I become rich? And if I have some money, I think that then one day when you turn into someone who has money, then you think, oh, it'd be better to have something else. And so merely having money doesn't fulfill your wishes. Merely being rich doesn't fulfill your wishes. Once you're rich, then you want something better, something more important. You think there's something better and more important. And what this shows us is that we sometimes think that this is the best thing, this is the greatest thing. But it shows that we don't really understand or know what is the best important thing. We have no understanding of what the ultimate benefit, the ultimate good is. And so now what I'd like to speak about in terms of these different sections, what is pure, excellent intention? This is the second point. So the main point today in the 16th stance is about the intention of a pure intention. The 7th is about the actions of a pure intention. So when we talk about excellent intention, when we talk about a pure, excellent intention, what we're speaking about is that no matter what action we may be doing, we're not thinking about it in terms of self-interest. Instead of thinking about our own self-interest, we're thinking about 100% focus on benefiting others. That's our aim. And we think, what can I do to help this other sentient being? And so a pure, excellent intention is understanding what is meant and the fact that we're having it and what the main point of that. If we don't understand this, then the danger that we face is that something might look on the outside as if it's virtuous, but in the actuality, it's unable to become an actual virtue or an actual good activity. So many such situations occur. And so if we need to understand, absolutely have to understand and recognize what a pure, excellent intention is. And we need to understand the crucial point of having a pure, excellent intention. For example, like today we're going to do a life release for an ox. You're going to release it for save its life and release its life. And this action of doing a life release for the ox, the job or the task of doing a life release, is it virtue or is it not? in terms of the way that we do life release and the way we do it, the way we act doing it, it's a virtuous way of doing this. It looks like a virtuous way to think. But whether it's actually a virtue or not doesn't only depend on how it looks. You can't necessarily say 100% that it actually is 100% definitely is virtue. The reason for that is that when we were doing the life release for the ox, that's only it's going to be the external expression of the person's manner or method of acting. And but together with that, there is also the motivation. It's not just external manifestation. There's the internal motivation and intention. But other people can see the external manifestations of your body and speech, but they can't see your motivation. And since no one else can see the motivation, there's this great danger that we're just going to ignore our motivation. So if no one else can see it, why should I worry about it? It's going to be okay. And we don't pay much attention to our motivation. There's its danger that this is going to happen. But actually, look at how things really are. The motivation and the intention are extremely important. And the importance is, if we think that we have the physical and verbal actions, like the physical and verbal actions of doing a life release of an ox. And what are if you think about the importance of the motivation and intention, then they're basically the same importance. Not only are they the same importance, the motivation and intention, if you say that they're even more important than the physical and verbal actions, then you could say that. And the reason for this is that the first that if we think we're going to do a virtuous action, if you don't have the motivation, for example, if you don't have the motivation to do a life release, to release an ox's life, then there's no doing the life release. If you don't have the motivation, then you can't even begin the action. And also when we're performing the action, while we're performing the action, as we are doing the life release of the ox, it's not a question of whether just going through the motions of a good action of protecting an ox's life. It's instead, do we have deep down a wish to protect the ox? Why do we want to release the ox? These questions can only be answered by our motivation and intentions. They can't be answered by our physical and verbal actions. And so for that reason, our motivation are basically what they're saying. They're the ones who are in charge of the action that we're doing. They're the ones with the real power. And so the motivation and intention have all the power, and the body and the speech are tools that it uses. For an example, it's like you're going on a road, driving down a road. So you're going down the road, if suddenly another car comes and then hits you. If it hits you a little bit, not so badly, just a little bit. So maybe they hit you physically and you fall down, and then you get up. And you're going to go and you're going to ask questions, right? And so when you go ask questions, who are you going to make the difficulties? Who are you going to ask the questions to? You're going to speak to the driver. You're not going to talk to the car. You're going to have to say to the car, why did you hit me? If you speak to the car, if you ask the car, everyone's going to think that you're crazy or stupid. So it's the same. You have to think about what is the purpose of releasing the ox, saving the ox's life. What is the reason why you're protecting the ox? Are you thinking about this ox? All of this can be answered by your motivation. The actual physical and verbal actions cannot answer the question. The crucial point comes down to your motivation. So if our saving an ox's life is out of love, for thinking, it wouldn't be right if this ox dies, if it's not out of commission. But if instead of that, we're doing it in order to show off as being a good person in front of other people, so that other people see us being a good person, as being a Dharma practitioner, if we're doing it for that reason, then we're doing the good action of saving an ox's life. But that action is called a pseudo-virtue. It's not true virtue. It's a pseudo-virtue. It looks like virtue. It's similar to virtue, but you can't say it's actually a virtue. And the reason why you can't say it is because of your motivation. And then after this, we have the third point, is we need to accomplish virtues that are quality and meet a standard. And when we think about these points that I've just been speaking, what we can know is that the motions of our body and speech, even if we're just protecting the life of an ox, for some people, this action of saving an ox's life is virtue. For some people, it becomes a pseudo-virtue, and the reason for this, what it comes down to, there are primarily two different motivations, and the first of these is the motivation. And when we talk about motivation, there are two different types. There are two types, the causal motivation and the immediate motivation. Now, the causal motivation, if you talk about it in easy terms, is the aim we have when we begin to think that we should do that action. So it's that what you think at the moment to think. And so your aim when you start thinking about doing the action, that's what we mean. Now, the immediate motivation means the motivation at the time that we're actually doing the action, what we are thinking at the time while we're doing the action. That's what it is. And so the first reason is the motivation, and the motivation has two types. There's the causal motivation, the immediate motivation, and the second reason is the level of how much of the action we can do, how much we can do. And so to talk about in contemporary language, we talk about the quality and the quantity of the action. That's it. Now, when you talk about the quality of an action, from one perspective, whether an virtue is a quality virtue, or whether it's an authentic virtue, depends upon, from one perspective, upon what our motivation is and what our aims are. So as I just mentioned, there are these two different types of motivations, right? And among the two, the aims for practice doing the action, and whether we have the pure intention, and what this comes down to is our causal motivation. And so among the first thing we need to know is the aim. We need to know what is our aim. So whatever action we are doing, the most important thing is we need to be clear about what our aim is. If we ask, what is our main aim for performing the virtue, then we need to be able to give a clear answer. It's not just we need to answer other people's questions, we need to know it clearly in our own minds. So the main aim for doing virtue, is it to make someone else rich? Is it to make them powerful? Or even is it to make them achieve liberation or the higher states and true excellence? Or is it in order to bring them achieve Buddha? And this has to be clear in our minds. So in this world, no, we don't need to speak about Dharma right now. Basically, in the world among ordinary people, people want to be able to produce a result in their life. If you want to have a good life, if someone doesn't have any clear aim and they feel like they've done something meaningful, no one's going to say that. You have to have a clear aim and then put effort into it. And because of that, then you achieve some sort of result. And if you don't have any, just sort of wander around doing nothing, then you don't achieve anything. So you absolutely have to have an aim. So we have to be clear about an aim. But the point that we have is if we're a practice meditator, we're not allowed to. Somebody would said that we can't mean if we can't say that if we're a Dharma practitioner, that we can't earn money or that we can't work. I'm not saying that actually. Even if we're practicing Dharma, we're humans and we have to have a livelihood. And if we're going to have a livelihood, then we need to earn money. So if we say that you can't earn money, we can't say that. But the point that we're speaking about is that we can earn money and we should earn money, but the earning money should just be one aspect of our aims or just one of many different aims. It shouldn't be like the totality of all our aims or so the extent of our life is not only earning money. Even if we're unable to attain money, that doesn't mean that we can't have a meaningful life. If someone thinks that the meaning of life is earning money, then if you lose money, then you think that you lost the meaning in your life, then that's really completely deluded and ignorant. In terms of us being Dharma practitioners, there are many different things that we need to do. But our ultimate hope, our ultimate aim, there's just one, and that is achieving the state of Buddhahood. So our life, our bodies, when we go to the next lifetime, at the time of death, the body dies. We exchange the body and go on to another body. But we don't exchange consciousness. Our consciousness continues. It's the essential purpose for our consciousness. Since the consciousness is what continues, so to make that consciousness meaningful, or the aim of transcending birth and death and reaching liberation in Buddhahood, that's an aim that does not change. So for one perspective, the point is that we need to have a clear aim. We need a clear aim for what we want to do. That's one point. And the second thing is that we need to have a stable intention. Not only is a clear intention, we have to have a clear aim. We have to have a stable aim. It's not like you think, oh, today this is important. Tomorrow that's important. Sometimes in worldly things we think, one day we think that the worldly things are important. Sometimes we think that the Dharma things are important. You can't do that. If you do that, it's difficult to achieve liberation and omniscience and the Buddhahood. We need to have a stable, unchanging aim. That's very important. And so here there's a story about this. And so this story is, what do we say about this story? So the story goes like this. In the old days, I think it was probably in China where this happened. There was a Zen master in China. So this Zen master, and he had a few students. And so the old days in China, the Chinese masters would make their own food for themselves. So they had an independent life. They lived on off their own means. And so one time, this master brought his students along, and they were planting grains. And so when they're planting rice, most of you know when you're planting rice, everyone who's in India and Nepal and Tibet, when you plant rice, you have to plant each sprout of rice individually in the rice paddy, right? Each one has to be planted individually. When you're planting each rice seedling, you have to plant them straight, and they need to be in a row in a nice line. So they have to be in a good row, so that when you look at it, so that there's not like much wavering or much crookedness in the line. What the students did is when they were planting the rice, they just did it kind of crooked. It's not like it's on a line, but some in the front, some in the back. It's kind of crooked. But the master, when they looked at the one that the master had planted, it's just like a perfect line, like a really good row. And so then his students began to suspect something, and they asked the master, "Oh, master, when you plant the rice seedlings, you put in a really straight line. It's incredibly straight. It's really straight. And when we planted it, doesn't happen like that. So what's that?" And this master said, he started to laugh a little bit. And what he said to them was, "Oh, that's really easy. When you're planting the rice seedlings, you're staring at a single thing and only looking at that one thing. And you're focusing on that one thing. And you take that as your aim, or you have a thing that you're using as like the reference that you're doing it as you're planting the rice. So you have like this target, and you're looking at that, and you draw like and you kind of like draw a line from that, and you begin from there, and then you put the and going in that direction, you plant the rice seedlings. And so the student said, "Oh, okay," and they continued planting. And as they were continuing planting, then the problem they had was that so before they were doing it, they're crooked. And now what happened is that what happened is it started going like this. Their line of seedlings going like this. It was straight, but you can't really say this. It wasn't completely straight. It was like kind of like an arc, like a circle, kind of like a circle, an arc. And so it is like this, it's kind of circular. What this master said was, he saw that and he said, "So how did this happen for you? What were you focusing on? What was your target?" He said. And he said, "What they were focusing on." What the student said, "Oh, master, you said that you have to take a thing and look at that as you plant, and then go in that direction as you put these stems. So there was an ox over there. And so that ox, and so we looked at the ox and then started planting the rice." And so what the master said to the students, "Oh, you guys don't understand. The ox is going to move, right? It's not going to stay in the same place. The ox will go here and there, and when the ox goes there and there, so then when the ox moves, then the ox moved, then they went over there, so they followed and for that reason, it made this kind of a curling. It's because their design went followed the ox and became so it wasn't stable, right? And so that's the reason why your line's not straight and it's crooked. And so when the thing that you focus on has to be a really stable thing. And so you need to use that as your measure. And then finally they understood. And over there's a big tree. So over by the rice paddy, there's a big tree. And they looked at that. And they took their measure on that and started to plant the rice. And then finally, their rice furrows became really straight and perfect. And so that's the same with We need our aim has to be something something stable, has to be clear. But not only does it have to be clear, but it also has to be stable. And if you don't have a stable aim, then sometimes you're something like virtue, something's like you're not doing virtue. There are many different situations. That's why. So you need that stable aim. And the second thing you need is that you need to have pure, excellent intentions. So when we talk about pure, excellent intentions, what we mean is that when we're benefiting other sentient beings, it must not be mixed with our own self-interest. If that benefiting others is connected to your own self-interest, then it's not actually pure, excellent intentions. It should be 100% for the benefit of the other sentient beings. And if it is, then that's what we call the pure, excellent intentions. If it's mixed with even a little bit of your own self-interest, then it's not pure. And likewise, we have this the motivation thing. Is this really going to and truly going to be beneficial to that other being? But of course, it's difficult for us to immediately have that pure and excellent intentions, to have something that's 100% other sentient beings. It's not at all mixed with self-interest. Difficult for us to do that. But it's important for us to do as much as we can. If at least we can do 50%, the motivation of benefiting others. So you're going to keep 50% for yourself, and for others, 50%, and think about others. If you're not able to do that, then it's difficult to develop excellent intentions. Basically, excellent intentions for others is like thinking about others as being somewhat better and more important than yourself. Thinking that their needs are more important than your own. Even if it's only 1% more, it's just thinking you should be able to think that the other person's needs are more important. That's it. And so that's the causal motivation. Then when you're performing the action, at the time that you're performing the action, we have to see how assiduous we are. And when we're doing the action, how precise are we about the action we're doing? How much interest are we taking it? And what this comes down to is our immediate motivation. The motivation that we have at the time, the way that we're thinking at the time that we're doing it. That's what it depends upon. And so the basic point. The level of quality that virtual action reaches depends upon our motivation. And so within our motivation, the two parts, the causal and the immediate, but basically it comes down to the motivation. And so therefore, when the great masters, whenever they're teaching the Dharma, and they say that the important motivation is important, whether you're studying Dharma, or whether you're reciting prayers and texts, no matter when, you have to correct your motivation. You need to correct your motivation and fix your motivation. The reason why they said this is in order to have like a quality of virtuous action, an authentic word action, that depends on the motivation. So that for that reason, there's like no choice but to talk about the motivation. And so this is talking about the quality of the virtuous action. Then we talk about the quantity. And so that's something we need to think about. If you think about to what extent, how vast of a virtuous action do we need to do? This is a question we have. But so do you have to do as large or as vast or as frequently as possible? Like, does this mean that a person go to do a life release every single day? They do a life release every day, and they do it their entire life, and they think that if they don't miss a single day, they think that this is a vast and extreme. Is it okay to say that that's a vast? It's not definitely so. You can't say unilaterally that it's one way or the other. And the reason this comes down to is that the extent of the virtue and the quantity of the virtue does not mean only the external appearance. What it primarily means is that what is the level of the action's quality? And while you're doing it, how much interest are you taking it? How assiduous are you being about doing it? How much are you thinking about it? And because of doing the virtuous action, what effect and what result it leads to? You need to look at these. If you don't look at them at all, and just do as much as you can to do life releases, and do as best, and think that the more you do, the better, and just merely doing as many as you can is not necessarily a great and a vast virtuous action. And so in particular, if we're thinking about Tibet these days, the situation that's happening has just been a certain amount of economic development. It's pretty good economic session. A lot of people have some money, right? So when they have money, so people are spending it. They're buying really kind of beautiful, ritualized, expensive smoke offerings, and and then all the offerings like the vice lives and things that you they spend a lot of money on the offerings, go to great expense on the offerings, and make huge offerings. Or when they do, and they buy an incredible number of prayer flags, and when they put them at the end, what happens is that all the earth and water are like dirtied by it. The environment is polluted. And in the end, what happens is that the animals get caught in the prayer flags and die. This is because of putting up the prayer flags. And this is something we have to think about. If we ask, did our ancestors not do as great offerings as we do now because they didn't have any money? No, we can't say that. Actually, the main point that it comes down to is that our ancestors had the faith, pure outlook and belief. But we don't have faith, pure outlook and belief the way they did. And so the situation we've come to is we've come down to the only thing, we're putting all our hopes on the quality and the scale of offerings. We have nothing to do a huge one in terms of the number. I think it's a great virtuous action. But the actual point is that actually the inside in our minds, it's empty inside because we have less faith, pure outlook and belief. But in the external appearance, it looks like more. The quantity is greater. But even as the quantity grows greater and the numbers grow greater, does that change our minds? It's difficult. So we're not talking about how vast an auction it is. It does not depend on how much money we spent in doing it. What it depends is how much mental expense we've gone through, how much sacrifice we've made mentally, in our mind, how much generosity we have. That's what it depends on. If we have to look at the amount of money, then everyone who's rich they're the ones who accumulate virtue. If we were to say that gathering the accumulations of merit was the same way we do things, we depend upon a quantity of external things, then when the Buddha spent 6 years practicing Hinduism, and then he went sat beneath the Buddha, what did he have? He had nothing at all. He didn't even have anything to food or drink. So forget about anything else. So how did the Buddha gather the accumulations? This is something we really need to think about. It's important to think about those. So the vastness of virtue and the quantity of the virtue is not a question of the quantity of the external things or the size of the external things. Instead, it's primarily our own minds. It depends on our mind, and we need to consider this. It's important for us to consider this. Likewise, we need to be in accord with the time and place and the different types of instruments. So we need to have various different ways for different kinds of beings in different times and places. If you say that unilaterally that practicing virtue is just doing this is virtue, if you get too attached to a single type of virtuous action and then disregard or belittle other types of virtue, that's not okay. We need to use many different methods to benefit sentient beings. And we need to work from all directions to increase our virtue. To give an example of this, is like something that everyone pays attention to is nutrition. We take a lot of interest in nutrition, right? We pay a lot to nutrition. We need a lot of different nutrients in our body. So this is something that people pay a lot of attention to these days. And when we're thinking about nutrition, the main point is you need to have a balance. The quantities of the different foods, the quantities, you have to look at balance. Likewise, you have to combine different types of food. It's important to you have to combine many different types of foods together. If you only one type of food, not enough. For example, if you think about legumes, like things that are made of legumes, like tofu, right? So in tofu, it's like a soy cheese, you could say, but it's tofu and such legumes. Like I've forgotten the English name. So they're a good source of protein, and they're helpful providing calcium and vitamins. So they're very beneficial in this way, right? But just because they're beneficial in this way, if you therefore only eat legumes, is that enough? No, it's not. If you only eat legumes, what happens is that you get rheumatism and gout. It worsens, aggravates gout. So when we eat, we absolutely must have many different, a variety of food, various different foods and fruits and so forth. If you only one type of food alone, then there's a danger that you're going to get sick. Your body will not be healthy. Likewise, when you are working to do virtuous things, you shouldn't be too attached to only one method or only class of virtuous actions. So I'm only going to do life releases. If you get really attached to that, some people get really attached to doing this burnt offerings. Now, from one aspect, it's good, but if you think that that alone is enough and think that the others are not important, that's not okay. And the reason is we need to use whatever method we can. If we do it in any different direction than we can, then we'll gather more, we'll be able to do more virtuous actions, and they'll be more beneficial. They'll have more effect. So in brief, when we're talking about doing virtuous actions, you have to use your intelligence. You have to be creative and examine, and then let our minds relax and perform the action. If performing means you can never change your ways at all, and then it go on ignorantly and bullheadedly, then it'd be difficult to say that you're doing some fine altruistic action or some virtuous action. So when we're doing virtuous action, it's important that it is accompanied with our prajna, the analysis of prajna. And others are just like being, thinking if we're not we're just stupid about it and think, I can do doing this, I'm going to only just do that, and we decide on one type of virtuous action and just do that out of overconfidence, then that's not okay. So this is another important thing for us to understand. So next, I'll probably continue speaking. That's probably okay. The 17th is the 17th good date. In terms of the outline, is among the 10th of the taking 10 applications, is taking the actions from good intentions as the path. The verse reads, to gain enlightenment, to benefit others, oneself and others, one must leave self-disparage and despair, anxiety, and weariness far behind, and strengthen one's unstoppable diligence. How could I live in this life, let my practice fluctuate? I think of this as one of my good deeds. I think there's a slight difference here. So what this one says is basically during MIKYÖ DORJE's time, there were a lot of people who said they had love and unbearable compassion. And they would spend their time doing various different things and do things in different ways. And so what some people would do is they first go study the scriptures from the Sutra tradition. They'd go study the Sutra tradition. What did they actually do? What they end up doing? They spend a couple of decades studying debate, the basics, basic logic of debate. And then they say, oh, I'm going to go study the Sutra tradition. But actually what they study, when you look at it, is to do the practice of studying rituals for the deceased. That's what I'm talking about, is the rituals for deceased, right? Like the wrathful and peaceful deities and the Amitabha, they'd only study these practices, but they didn't really study the profound point, the profound meaning of the tantras. They just did the rituals for studying the rituals, the ones that are going to get offerings and support their food. And so after they'd studied these to a certain degree, then what they'd say one day is, okay, I studied a fair amount of Dharma, and all of that Dharma, I've sort of kind of done as much to internalize the meaning. So I'm going to go off and go to the few years in mountain retreat. And so then they spend a few years in mountain retreat, then all the debate logic that they studied earlier, and all of the rituals that they studied earlier, they forgot it all. And they forgot almost everything, but still they got a little bit cocky. And they say, get cocky, and what they say is, and so I've spent a couple of years doing some practice, and so I've done, because of the meditation, I've had a certain degree of experience, like probably my realization has to do, it's like my prajna is just kind of like welling forth. And so they get really cocky about it, and they start to teach Dharma. And what they teach, what do talks about teachers? They talk about the paths, the practices of the three types of individuals, right? But they don't teach those in accord with the way they're taught in the scriptures. And the reason why they don't teach the three types of individuals, because we talk about the types of the practice of the three types of individuals, it's very clear about what should be done and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. It's very clearly taught. It's so clearly taught what we should do and not do. So you can't give it, just explain it any old way. So what they say is that there are a lot of things that the Buddha said, but you don't necessarily have to do it as it was. And the Buddha taught a lot. There's like a definitive and expedient meaning. You can't say that everything is necessarily a definitive meaning. And so really what you need for practicing the Dharma is you need the pith instructions. The pith instructions of achieve mastery of the Dharma. The pith instructions for the earlier master of the past who have realized the nature of it is, and then there are the pith instructions that they've given from that. And so that this is the Guru's pith instructions. And so then they say whatever they want, saying it's the Guru's pith instructions. And then in order to gain some fame and a reputation and a pleasure, they'd engage in some activities of teaching and debating and writing, or they'd do various things. That's what some people would do. And what other people would do is they'd say, I can't do any sort of these big jobs like teaching, or that I'm not up to that. I'm not up to teaching, debate, or writing. I can't do that. So that's no point for we're doing so much work. Before I finish all those jobs, either someone's going to kill me or I'm just going to die naturally. There's no point in doing that. So instead of going and doing all that work, what they do is they go someplace where they can get all the food, clothing, and conversation that they want. They go someplace where a few ladies are going to sponsor them, and they say, "Oh, I'm doing things for the best benefit for others." So forget about doing virtuous things. They're basically spending their time doing various unvirtuous, unneutral things, and they stay there all the time. And while they're staying, they're saying, everyone looks at, "Oh, what a nice life they have. This Lama is a way of deeds. Maybe it would be great if I were like that." And so people would be attracted by seeing that. And so everyone thinks in videos. And everyone think that that it's a lot of nice, and so he'd gather a large gathering of students, and so this happens. And if we took out the people, that kind of people, then MIKYÖ DORJE didn't think that they're important or feel feel any aspiration to be like that, nor did was really swayed or influenced by them. The way MIKYÖ DORJE himself performed his activity of benefiting others, if you thought that instead of benefiting someone else that's going to harm by that, if you could call it benefiting others, and you said you should doing this, you just stopped doing such actions because it's not actually a virtue. And so, because of stopping doing these actions, the people who had faith in MIKYÖ DORJE also didn't consider pseudo virtues to be important and significant, and they gave it. And this is said in MIKYÖ DORJE's own 100 short instructions. It's the best to benefit sentient beings directly. If you can't actually benefit sentient, then you should focus on benefiting sentient beings indirectly and begin by not harming other sentient beings. Then if you can teach the Dharma, or contemplate Dharma, or gather monks and so forth, and build monasteries, and that's fine. And it's okay to build stupas and statues. There's a hope that these can be causes for us to achieve liberation and omniscience. But if you don't have the intention of focusing on the benefiting sentient beings, or if you do, but when you're actually putting it into practice, you're causing harm to sentient beings, if that's what's happening, there's no point to doing those. So whether you call it the name of benefiting others, they actually become actions that harm oneself and others, so you need to stop doing them. That's what he says. And so sometimes this is like a really attractive external benefit, a really impressive name. And so we're deceived by this and we get caught up in it. And we think, oh, maybe I'm doing no practice. We think we're doing something to benefit other sentient beings. And other people will see us as doing that. And then we and ourselves we've all become deceived. So actually we have to absolutely must examine ourselves. It's really critical to do this. If we're actually going to practice Dharma, we have to look, is the way we're practicing Dharma a true way of practicing Dharma or not? If we say, I'm a Dharma practitioner, and if we're not practicing Dharma to fool ourselves, we're practicing to benefit ourselves. In actuality, we practice the Dharma in order to get a good result out of it. And so for that reason, we must not deceive ourselves. And it's important to continually check ourselves and examine ourselves, to examine and correct ourselves, to see, we need to look at ourselves, to examine ourselves. Are we doing the Dharma practice properly or not? And then we get to the point of talking about this. I just thought of something, this story. I thought that maybe that'll be enough for today. Probably best to do that. And so then tomorrow, because I'll continue speaking about the 17th good deed. Now, this story is this. And if I don't tell stories, of course, you can get bored, right? Now, my story is it's a story about Milarepa. And the story is that before Milarepa passed away, please wait a moment. So before Milarepa passed away, he left a testament, he left a will. He made his will, told the students about his will and testament, and he said that I don't really have any important or valuable things. I have a staff that's made out of otter wood, and there's a hat that he wore, and then he always wore a cotton robe. And so said, take a piece of this up to Dapo Rinpoche as like a souvenir. Then he had another staff that he often used, and together that there was like a pile of rags. He said, give these to Rechumpa. And so in this way, he gave a few things to his more important students, right? So of course, he didn't have any things. That's all he had. He just there's nothing to do other than cut his Zen into small pieces. There's nothing to do. I can't say, I'm going to give him this computer. Give the iPhone to that one. We think, we have a lot of things, right? But Milarepa, he didn't have anything other than cutting his robe. There's nothing else to do. So giving little pieces of the robe to other people. That's what he's saying, right? But what he did say is, he says something really strange. He said, I've collected a little bit of gold. I said, I have a little bit of gold, and so I've hidden this sort of by the wall of my meditation hut, and so after I die, you go get that gold and then share and divide it up amongst yourselves. So when he said, divide it up amongst yourselves, the students, Samita said, I thought, Milarepa has gold? Oh, I never thought that Milarepa has gold, but he has it. He must have gold. He probably has gold, they think. Some people thought, how could he have gold? I don't know. And other people say, he probably does, things given by his sponsor. He probably kept it just a little bit. We usually think that Milarepa can't have any gold, but he must have a little bit, they think. And there was one student up there who said, how could a Lama like Milarepa have any gold? You don't say all these stupid things. Just don't say these ridiculous things, is what he said. In any case, in the end, when Milarepa passed away, then all the students then gathered. And they went to go see, was there gold, as Milarepa said there, and they went to go look for the gold. They went behind his retreat hut. And in the back, there was a little, in the wall, there was something hidden. There actually was something that was hidden there. It was, like it was wrapped up in cloth or something. And so they took it out, and they opened it up in everyone's presence. And when they opened it up, there was no gold. There wasn't any gold. There was like 3 cubes of sugar, right? 3 cubes of white sugar. And there was like a square of cloth. And there was a little bit of sugar, the 3 sugar interrupting the things. And there was also a letter that he'd written with his hand and a knife. And the student saw this. The Chechen said that
줍시마지 서바 레 카간 줍시데 그냥 tumbu 체네 레데 마세게 바도 아니 미르르라 tumbu르르르 체체 쩌쇼스 소도아 다디 슈드래야 내가 치슈디 이기디 슈드 같이서 아 밀레레 발야 세리유스 미 카시 유스 大地主看了加过就送多，他讲是加过少事，俺米勒来把的呀，这里有天定的，加过少，都是的提多。这里大个的啥呢？其实米勒来把公包做呢，你们是不是嘛？都多嘛？这里没啥嘛的，深度钱，深度没得。或者这个那话咋呢？其实米勒来个。이게 뒤집다 깨버추스라 매 강가로 개모쇼 샘도 데베깔이야 개모쇼야 매 강가로 개모쇼네 하하후후스라고 하르 정말 어다더니 인도산 델레 얘기 듣다 중디 슈가 김전 가르사나 초직니 시에비나 아주 사람 지좀 밀러 레버스가 다 최주 댕이지 최배 가까워지 댕이지 다 최 넘바체 댕이지 인도산에 다 공배지 가르소 자는 구요미 여기 아sol에 야미 쟁게 다 남준이 배지 투 감보로 시리즈 페메지 이기를 삼 되는거 뭐네 되는 쟤는 지준 밀러 레버스 처음
Excuse me, I was a little bit, I had a technical problem. Actually, Milarepa was not always a really citizen. He's actually a very relaxed person. He never had nothing. He had just like this one cotton robe, and he was spent his whole life. In the very end, when he died, he left this really funny thing, and he left it for everyone. So generally, it's not possible to write something like that when they died. We wouldn't even think about doing this. At the time, they were getting ready to die. And at the same time, Milarepa had been poisoned.
도는 신도 비게 대대요나 샤트데 마 꾸제 난게 툭줘보요 구양보요 진짜지 잘 초진대 초진이 가르쳐 되어서나 지금 밀라레베 콩글로마티졸라 처단을 보지 청감을 보지 나 여버래서 다는 이 지금 밀라레베 수장원에 전에기 지겐 기 가르쳐진 내용이야 싸완이니 셔바메데 샤데 얼마 다 이내야 신의 패가 나타나 나를 세리 유송도 남산로만 다 남지 지진 남다르더니 거와라 셴바자는 메딩이들 다 세리 유라도 남산지 도바지스타요 도바지스타 다 지진 다부터 되게 쳐발라 근데 이나 삼삼지 뭐로 다 이내 원에는 카체인데 세리 요마 근데 로만년디 지수가 세리 요바 이지 지고마 이내 양로마 다가지 야 시다 이제 메딩에서 지금 밀레레바티 엄마 때문에 진심도 다 콘셉트 냐딩게 꼬올이야 아주 하마고 세르 냐딩게 근데 진짜로 선선을 되는 쓰고 다들이 로마를 청감지 지단 지금 밀레레바 코랑 왜네 셰비나 세르 생게데 다 콘라 가쇼지 콘라 여바데 메바리 켜바자니 엄마 다티 여바데 메바리 켜바 엄마를 사디야 지금 오늘 지금 밀레레바도 공화 쳐바 빼매지 근데 인주산 미신다가 세르피네 파쿠소 근데 쪽바레 세 근데 가면은 엄마 콘은 세르기 고바요 콘 세르기 가르쳐 세르기 고바면 안 세르 고메 숨으로마다 양 앞에 쳐바 시비지 인도 때야 제동 알 세르지 고메 파키기 되게 좀 오늘 전에 가르쳐지 ser mugaba Hindustan ser come sono abstritto da tini Hindustan nge tiri shuga Hindustan karasana jizu milare ke namda didro jeliang asu sam ta ba yimine ya one tne ke ta ji nen ka chi shue sana da do ke chi shue do di karimba samar ta ji susu misina karimba deji 맞아 지금 삼은 동과 알고 있는데 지금 내가 지금 내가 와 어떤 데를 리제샤 나서 다 드린 게 대점 지금 3샤인 다 현도인다 오
Bye.